Okay, everyone, welcome to the Sustainability Management webinar series, and we're very happy to welcome you to the call. My name is Angela Kassler. I'm the Executive Director of the Sustainability Management Association, and if you could please follow us on our social media, we would truly appreciate that so we could stay connected. And my personal email is on the bottom of this slide, akassler@sustainabilityma. And most of you are members, and we just wanted to introduce you a little bit to our association. We're an educational nonprofit 501c6, and we were started to really create widespread knowledge and skills about how to manage for sustainability. And I'm going to go ahead and mute some of our callers. Just a moment, please. And for our purpose, we really have membership is open to anyone for people that are interested in managing for sustainability, no matter what your field is or industry or sector, whether you work for the government or nonprofit. And we also offer a certification, and we're the very first certification in how to manage for sustainability. So our professional level requires 2 years of professional experience, and that would honor you with the certified professional level. And then those that are learning about sustainability, we have a second tier for a certified associate. So please do contact me if you would like more information about certification. We also offer continuing education credits as far as certification training goes, and also attending these webinars. So those of you who are our certified members on the call, don't forget to track this webinar for your continuing education credits. And we would just like to go over a little bit about what certification really means. This is a certification that focuses in the sphere of actual management to develop a strategy for your organization and then really drill down to create frameworks and project management to understand your long-term objectives and set clear target goals for your employees and all of your divisions or wherever they may be, and to work internally within your organization and externally through your value chain to really create solutions to the problems that you can't solve by itself. And we also follow up with how to report your sustainability initiatives and your metrics in either GRI reporting and communication with your stakeholders. So we'd like to invite you to visit our webpage to learn more about us, and any questions you may have, please let me know how I could assist you. There's a lot of ways to learn about sustainability, and the certification exam comes with a study guide that all of the questions come from. So if you're interested in learning how to manage for sustainability, this is a great study guide to get you started, and it goes through all of the test questions. So who are our members? We're really interested in technology and innovation and the products of tomorrow, and I'm very proud of our board members who are volunteers as well. And UT Hang is on the call today, and I really welcome you. We have a new change to our leadership as well, and Brandon Morton just joined us as our president of the SMA as of January 2016. So we are believing in transforming leadership, and we hope that you will join us for our very next webinar, which is scheduled for March 8th at the same time at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And we're going to start a series of actual project management for people that are interested in how to deal with all of the details of sustainability. So this one will start off with energy management and the whole series of how to integrate it into your organization. So now I'd like to turn over the webinar to our guest speaker, and I'd like to introduce you to Stuart DeCew. He is the Program Director of the Yale Center for Business and the Environment, and today's presentation is going to focus on the carbon tax on talent and a research study that he has prepared for the millennial survey that they've done. So we're very interested in being able to see his presentation today. And I thank you so much for guest speaking. And in the meantime, I'm turning over the controls to you, Stuart. And for the members of our audience that are on the call, during the presentation, if you could please find your chat bar and type in any comments or questions you have. We'll have a presentation for about 40 minutes, and then at the end of the call, we'll have a discussion or a Q&A session to answer all of your questions. So, Stuart, can you see the message where I made you the presenter?
I can. Yep.
Perfect. Thank you.
Great. So can everyone see my screen? believe it's showing now, Angela.
Yes, we can.
Great. Well, again, many thanks for the invitation to present today. My name is Stuart DeCew. I'm the director of the Yale Center for Business and the Environment, which I'll get into a bit as a joint initiative between the Yale School of Management and the School of Forestry and Environmental Studies. And today, I'm going to walk through the results of a global survey of business school students that we conducted in the fall of this year prior to the Conference of the Parties in Paris on business school students' attitudes toward and opinions on climate change and environmental sustainability. It was, really a fascinating effort for us because one of the questions that people, or considerations that people have consistently put out on why focusing on sustainability makes sense as a corporate strategy is that it will yield increased recruitment, retention, and a host of other issues, but nobody really had a great deal of data on this. And we'd seen a lot of different data on the millennial workforce and what kind of considerations and interests and issues they had, but we hadn't seen anything specifically in this space. So we were able to actually test it and find some really interesting results at a global level that represent 29 different business schools and geographies all across the world. So I'll get into that. First, I'm just going to talk a bit about the partners who were critical in making sure that this study could happen. It's the result of really a great collaboration between a number of different groups and individuals, and then dig into the results a bit and talk a bit about some of the implications, or at least where we're seeing them. And yeah, as Angela mentioned, please feel free to type in any questions and comments throughout the presentation. So first, why are we doing this? Why are we interested? So the Yale Center for Business and the Environment is about a decade old, and it's a joint initiative between the School of Management and the School of Forestry and Environmental Studies, and it builds off of an over 30-year history of collaboration between the two schools. Yale was the first to found a joint degree program where students could get 2 master's degrees in 3 years rather than 4. There's been a strong alumni push and a strong student push for a long time within Yale to focus on these issues. And the center was launched really as a platform for connecting issues more broadly with external partners and across the university outside of just the 2 schools that we primarily serve. And for us, the real, we are an applied center, and very student-driven and focused. So we're always really interested in where does student demand meet challenges in the world, and then how do we build back the kind of programs, faculty relationships, and opportunities that make a lot of sense to match that student demand with the external challenge. And one of the areas where we really begun connecting early on was on how do you we're in New Haven. We're a total of between the 2 schools around 1,000 students. To really go to scale and make sure that we can have the type of impact that we're interested in having, we need global reach and partnerships and engagement. And so we've created over time a number of different partnerships that have allowed us and worked with a number of different partnership organizations that have allowed us to collect results on a survey like this and be able to make sure that they're statistically significant and robust. And the first is that I'll talk about is the World Business Council for Sustainable Development. So we've been working closely with them for a period of now going on 4 years, and Yale was recently just made the first knowledge partner of the WBCSD. And so that actually makes the university a collaborator in the cluster and working groups that they do at a global level with the 200 multinational organizations. And so this survey idea actually started when the dean of our business school, Ted Snyder, spoke with a representative from the World Business Council a year and a half ago, or over that, Gail Whiteman, who's a professor in residence there. And they both expressed a real strong interest in how do we take the pulse of global MBA students on an issue of critical concern in the world. And Gail was quite interested in that being on climate change, and Ted was really interested in piloting the idea that you could represent the global voice of a rising generation of leaders at a specific time. and place and be able to capture that and put it out into the world. And so then as we were going through the survey development, the World Business Council was critical in looking at how we were constructing the questions and what the business take would be on them, how the results would be incorporated or thought through by businesses. So we made sure that we could make this as have the public impact that we were looking for. The critical component, though, is a partnership that Yale convened a number of years ago called the Global Network for Advanced Management. And this is now 28 business schools from around the world representing both the developed and the developing world. With the balance being in places in the world where really a lot of the growth and change is happening. And it's much different than your typical business school partnership, which is usually based on a exchange of students or an executive program or something that is a bilateral engagement that's very limited. This is one where all the members contribute something in. There's no money that ever changes hands. This is all about what you offer in and then what you can access for doing that. And so this partnership has blossomed and led to global network weeks where students from around the world are actually taking classes during their spring breaks at the other universities. There's a number of small network online courses that take place where students are working in global virtual teams on individual projects and assignments. We've managed one and run one called Natural Capital, Managing Risks and Opportunities in Global Resource Systems, where you have 50 students from around the world in 15 time zones and or 12 time zones in 15 countries, all working in a synchronous class at the same time. So it's really an incredible platform to do things that I think respond to the need to have culturally fluent, diverse global leaders who are skilled in working in complexity. And so there's a lot of things that have come out of that, and we've invested a lot of time in building up programs with them. And we've done a number of things prior to this, but this survey was sort of the next test of how far can we go and what can we do and execute on to be able to get results that hopefully matter in the world. And then we added into that a couple of U.S. business schools. You can see on this slide that Duke and MIT, both partner schools here in the U.S. who we work with in a number of issues, were also able to disseminate and put out this survey to their members. And then there are a couple other individuals in particular who are really critical to executing on this. One, we have a partner, Jennifer Wang, who is, if anybody is interested, going to be doing follow-up work with the survey results and getting even more detailed on what they mean. And she is a PhD candidate at Stanford who works at who is in their EIPER program, the interdisciplinary program. There, and she was really the kind of engine of analyzing and looking at all the data. And then the lead designer and the person who executed this survey, Laura Franceschini, actually moved on to greener pastures. She's no longer with us. She's at Google, working in their sustainability department. But if any of you are on the West Coast, she is the one who can go through the year of execution on this thing in much more nitty-gritty detail than I can, because she was the one leading it for that entire time. So digging into the survey results themselves, so we this captured the opinions of, as I said, 29 business schools in 5 continents in 25 countries, and we executed this all in the early part of the fall, so late September into early October of this past year, with the goal of getting all the results right directly prior to the Conference of the Parties in Paris. And we, total number of students at all these schools, a little over 1,750, and then we captured many more responses than 3,700, but after cleaning the data and making sure that all the ones we had were corrected and completely validated, et cetera, we got to 3,700. So an average school level response rate of 28%, and statistically significant, I mean, in terms of the the percentage of people reporting at each school, so we could feel confident that we were representing the folks at each school. And we did a lot of things to try to ensure that this survey was seen by the broad contingent of students rather than just those that would be interested in the topic. So when the survey went out to all the students at these schools, it was sent out by the dean, and it was not entitled, it had no mention of it being related to climate change or environmental sustainability. So it went out as a global survey from this network, Global Network for Advanced Management, and students responded to that. And then, it was obviously sent out a number of times over the weeks, but we really took a number of measures to make sure that institutionally it had broad reach with the students and that it wasn't targeted as somebody for students who were specifically interested in this topic. And what we were looking to capture was their knowledge about climate change and other sustainability issues, the opinions of how these issues will impact business, their considerations, personal considerations of companies' environmental performance and their career choices, and then finally, the impressions of how well business schools are actually doing to prepare students to navigate and lead on these issues. As we came across, we got in the findings, and it was from the first, survey results to the end, they maintained incredible consistency. And we were, from my position, I was very pleasantly surprised with how the results came out, that you had this global, consistent response across the board with little variation regionally on a business need to act on these issues, that their efforts currently being made were not felt by the students to be sufficient, and that they needed to act broadly across the board, and they needed to do more in this space. And it was really an issue of to their competitive advantage, so that this generational shift is occurring and students really don't see any gap between strong environmental performance and economic performance, that they view businesses that are strong in having a strategy and executing in this space are the ones who are going to be the most successful long term. They embrace this as part of their roles, and they want it to be a part of what they do in their jobs. And they think that businesses, they want to go work in businesses that have a mission to lead in this space, which was interesting. And then on a personal basis, and this is where the carbon tax on talent piece comes in, and we'll dig into these results more deeply, they are really, there is a strong move, and I think it flips the conventional wisdom on its head of where people think business students may be, that there may be a consideration or a thought that business school students would be the most mercenary or the most out for profit of many students out there, but that when given the choice, only 16% choose compensation, 84% would intend to work for a company with strong environmental performance, and we can dig into the details underneath that, but then there's even some stronger indications of where there may be a carbon tax on talent for companies that don't have strong performance in this space. And then the final piece is, just as businesses need to adapt to how they recruit and how they embed this in people's roles, business schools need to as well, that the students are well versed in climate change. They understand the issue. They understand the risk that's there, but they don't feel adequately prepared to respond to the challenge. That they're willing, they have the desire, they have the scientific background, but in terms of where does the rubber meet the road and implementation and strategy and goal setting, they're not there, and then the business schools can act as a bridge on that. And so, in the executive summary and the forward of the survey, you'll see a lot of these components of just the call to action laid out by Ted Snyder and Peter Bacher from the World Business Council for Sustainable Development, and Ted is the dean here at the Yale School of Management. But this is an issue that requires immediate action and response on both sides. So, digging into the survey itself, who responded? Who are the people there? So I mentioned there are the 29 schools. We got a representation from across the globe with centers of gravity in Europe and the Asia-Pacific regions, just as there are more schools in the global network represented in some of those areas, but with representation and response from the Middle East and Africa, from schools in Latin America, as well as schools in North America. As you can see from the age range, we really are talking about the millennial generation, almost 90% of the respondents being 35 and below. The degree programs are also representative of different degrees that are out there. Some areas of the world actually don't offer what would be classified as an MBA, but they're offering a different type of degree, which would be commensurate. The gender split is very similar to what you would see in most MBA programs, and then the full-time, part-time as well. And so on the digging into the findings specifically, as I mentioned first, there was a generational shift that's underway. And one thing that we did in constructing the survey was that we pulled questions from a number of existing surveys to look at comparability. And one of those that we did was an Accenture survey of CEOs that was conducted in 2013. And we looked at questions from that which we could bring into the survey to look at, how is business perspective changing from a generation of CEOs who are engaged in these issues to the rising generation of business leaders who want to look at these. And what you see is, and you can see that represented in the kind of baton passing that's going on in the infographics here, is the students are kind of more concerned, and that level of concern is rising, or is rising quickly from 2013 to now. Obviously, it's not apples to apples, but on how the global economy is operating and the way that we can move forward. And then that they feel that business is not making sufficient efforts to address these environmental challenges. And so, as I mentioned, the students believe that there is a responsibility for the companies to respond in this space. So they see that there is this gap of response. They understand that there is a need to do it, and then they're actually identifying and looking at a variety of ways in which it can be incorporated into business operations. And so this vast majority, 70 to 94%, on a number of suggested areas that you can see on the right, sort of say, this is what we'd like to see businesses doing to work on these. And that's the kind of industry collaborations and stakeholder partnerships, like represented on this call today, in terms of the collaboration across businesses and industry, to the World Business Council for Sustainable Development, to the kind of environmental profit and loss statement like PUMA has put together on measuring the profit negative impacts of activities, to board level discussion and action, which you see strongly represented at some corporations and less so at others. The integrated reporting of financial and environmental metrics, something that a lot of people are challenged by and struggle with, but something that people view as being critical going forward. And then incorporation of sustainability considerations in discussion with financial analysts. And I think this is something that a lot of people we've heard candidly from companies, that when they've done it and focused on the mega trends associated with their business operations and how their strategy fits in with that, it's actually been received quite favorably by some financial analysts. So how do you present the case, a strong business case that aligns with sustainability in ways that make sense? So you see this this kind of full move of the business student community toward more engagement, and that there is very little separation between economic performance and environmental sustainability. I think that generational piece is something that we're definitely teasing out in these findings. And in terms of the responsibility to act, you see that interestingly enough, this was done prior to COP, and businesses and governments are seen as having equal. The majority say that there's equal responsibility for them to act, and that I think there is a pragmatism in the business school students who responded, and that they feel that businesses, as kind of those that scale and provide services and goods, really should be leading these efforts to address some of the issues. And they see that businesses and governments are really in the leadership position, and other actors such as NGOs, academic institutions, other folks should actually be lower on the list, that they really view these two as the kind of key partners in moving this forward. And that they believe that a lot more needs to be done, that the kind of aggressiveness of goals being set and the targets that are out there are not sufficient. So you see them looking at this and embracing this as an idea, and this gets into as well how they want to see it in their own work their jobs. So they view this as being something that will increase brand value and trust. It'll enhance innovation through R&D, new solutions. It can improve the regulatory environment for the companies, and as I said before, improve market competitiveness. And this was one of the areas that we actually began to see slight regional variation on this. And I think when we asked about businesses' responsibility to act on climate change, funny enough, it was the developed world students from North America and Europe that were sort of saying there was a bit of a lower responsibility for businesses to act, and then in some areas in the Middle East and Africa and in Latin America, it was seen as being a higher bar that businesses needed to do more in this space. So we haven't teased out the reasons behind that, but it was interesting to see small variations in this finding. But again, the central thesis being that this is seen as being your competitive strategy aligned with this will be able to drive growth for your business is definitely something that these business students look at. Now, I think one of the findings that's gotten the most external attention on this is that when we ask students about their interest in working for companies, as I mentioned before, what we found was that it flips the conventional wisdom on its head that business students are strictly motivated by compensation. So when asked, would you take a company with higher salary? Would you take an equal salary at a company with good environmental performance, or would you take a lower salary to work at a company with really strong environmental performance? 84% intended to work for a company with good environmental practices in total, whether that be companies where they were taking a pay cut or they were getting equal pay to work for one of those. And then 44% said that they would work for a company, they would take a pay cut to work for a company with better environmental practices. And then almost 20% indicated that they would not accept a job at a company with bad environmental practice, regardless of the salary. And so, we saw that, and I think we were, the compelling part of that is, and if you dig even further into the data, just as a side note, within that 44%, a number are saying that it would require a significant amount more money to work for somebody with bad environmental practices. So 19% said they wouldn't even consider working for a company, and then in many of the other instances, you had about 20% more students, a little less than that, about 15 actually, who were indicating it was they would require such a premium that it would be really sub-economic for any of those companies to try to hire them. So when you look at that and flip it on its, the inverse is that there is a carbon tax on talent. That companies who have poor environmental practices are going to be competing for fewer students, and they're going to have to pay more for those students. And so, if these survey results hold when people are accepting job offers or when they're negotiating, companies who aren't performing well and don't have a progressive stance on these issues are actually currently being punished by the market, which we found to be quite interesting. And then when you go a little further into this finding, okay, this is what they intend to do, and why, what are the significant implications of that? Then 2/3 want to, no matter what they do, want to incorporate environmental sustainability into the job that they choose. So this is a broad swath of business school students who all want to have that as being a component of their work, kind of the Unilever model, the sustainable living plan, that is in a very attractive way for people to kind of go into an organization and maybe not have that as their chief role, but to be able to have that as a component of their role. 87% then say that they want, in the business-to-business relationship, it's this kind of effect of people want to do work with people that they respect and trust, and a strategy on environmental sustainability is seen as a proxy for somebody who's trustworthy and good to do business with. So you have 87% are more likely to do business with companies that have excellent environmental performance. So again, playing out in how these relationships would function. Almost 80% likely to apply for jobs that have strong performance, so your brand and the kind of brand halo around that is driving more applications, so you're getting a more competitive pool. And again, going back to this point that I made earlier, that 71% say that excellent environmental performance will improve market competitiveness, and that's on a firm level. So they're really saying the competitive strategy is tied to your strategy on the environment, and then that actually goes up when you're looking at the overall economy. So 80% of the respondents say that that economic growth and environmental sustainability, or that strong environmental performance overall in the economy are tied. That if you're protecting the environment, you're going to see good environmental growth rather than you're going to see good economic growth rather than that being in conflict. So that's really driven a lot of conversation, and I think one which we can explore in the questions or others of where does that get explored by companies and others, because one thing that we consistently see at schools here, and one thing that we hear from sustainability departments and companies, is there's a disconnect between the values that a company has and the work that they do, and then the message that gets delivered by HR department recruiting new talent. That many times the departments, whether on social and environmental issues, are asking them to lead with what do we do and how do we, what are we doing that's good for the world? How do we do well and do good? And tell the kind of community that we'd like to pull in that this is our approach, and then that doesn't necessarily come out in the HR presentations that are made on campuses, and there's a missed opportunity to recruit. And there's some side research that's related on the best performing employees are ones that are motivated by mission. So I think there's a real need to recruit and attract people who are motivated by things other than compensation as well, just for productivity and performance reasons. And then the fourth finding, and the fourth key one, is what do we need to do in schools and how should we respond here? So again, as I mentioned before, we based a lot of questions on other surveys. So there's a group that we collaborated with here at Yale called the Yale Project on Climate Change Communication, which does a really well-known survey called the Six Americas, and they also do polling in China and India on the overall attitudes toward climate change and global warming. Depending on your term, and we use their questions to compare to this population, and so at least compared to a North American audience, this global audience of business school students has far and away a greater understanding of climate change is happening and what the science is. So this group, this primarily under 35 a group of students, already understands the science. But what they don't get, and when you transition over from to the left side or the right side of the slide, they only feel moderately or not at all knowledgeable about how to make businesses more environmentally sustainable. So they looked at, in the earlier part of the survey, we saw that there are all these actions. Now they sort of know that they're needed and they feel strongly about them, but they don't necessarily know how to implement them or how to put them into practice. And so that really, I think, speaks to the opportunity that business schools have to be able to act in this space and the need. And this is also an issue that I think a lot of people see as being a competitive one, that if you have a more mission-driven group of people coming up looking for education, they're and have a different set of values that they're looking for, and they have a different set of beliefs about the way the economy should reflect those values, then you need to adapt and change the curriculum to be able to address some of those. And so that currently they're seeing these students want more integrated into both the core curriculum at schools as well as their career services and counseling. This also extends to the elective courses at schools, where you see a similar percentage, people just wanting more across the board at business schools. And then one thing that we have here, which a number of schools expressed interest in, there was over 50% was joint degree programs, where you're integrating multiple disciplines, where you're really looking at what is the MBA, what does the MBA pair with to be able to provide an interdisciplinary skill set that will allow you to solve some of the issues that you're seeing when you're in these organizations. So there is a talented, intelligent group of people out there who don't necessarily have the training to address the problems that they want to solve. They want to go work for organizations that are engaged in the process of addressing and solving some of these issues and questions, and they think everything needs to be done quicker and faster. So we don't necessarily, we haven't gotten to the point where we're really accelerating the pace of change to catch up with this next generation of students. So, as we see the results on this, we have businesses that need to step up and address. You have the fact that I think students are optimistic, the fact that they embrace this change, that they sort of see that it's a huge challenge, but they are not shying away from it. So you do see that people are kind of in this position of wanting to take on these roles and responsibilities. They want it embedded in their positions rather than say it's someone else's. And they're willing to walk with their they're willing to actually express that in with how they take jobs and the kinds of positions that they take and what they're paid. So they're willing to push people aside who don't have strong practices, and they're willing to give people a discount who do. And we see that anecdotally with the types of decisions that students make and what corporations or what kind of people they're attracted to. I think that engaged CEOs of today, the folks that are really carrying the torch, are going to be able to attract and grab a talented set of people in a much easier way than somebody who isn't. We right now have to begin looking at how do we prepare people. What are the ways that we are doing the things correctly for students in the classroom? What are the cases? What are the types of services? How are we connecting to the companies where people can actually practice this? And then what are the things that students need to see more of? Is it anything from putting a People and Planet course right alongside with your marketing and accounting and finance in the core curriculum? Is it that within every course you have in the core curriculum, when you're doing accounting, you're also learning an environmental profit and loss statement, and when you're looking at competitive strategy, you're looking at Unilever's sustainability plan and what that's done to increase their brand recognition and their talent acquisition. I think there's a lot of different ways that we could see a response on our side at the schools. And so when we finished up with these results, one of the things that was really, I think, incredibly helpful was that we had this set of deans from these schools in the Global Network for Advanced Management who distributed the results and then were really distributed the survey and really interested in disseminating the results. So then they took it upon themselves to look at local levels in their local markets on how do you distribute and get in touch with the press on what this means. So, anywhere coverage in India to South Africa to Chile to the US to the UK, all these different places, because they had connections with these business schools, were then reporting on the results at one time. So it really acted as an incredible channel for us, along with the ability to work with our partner, knowledge partner, the World Business Council for Sustainable Development, in getting those results out to the business community. So the faculty director here at the center went and presented to the WBCSD to talk to those 200 multinational companies about what are the implications of this research for their strategy going forward. So I think that it strikes a chord in terms of what people might think would be true, but provides this robust set of data to justify people making a strategic decision on how do we look at the next generation of talent and ways of making sure that we're responding to their needs and interests. And just a quick plug, for those who are interested, this is the kind of thing we're actually going to be digging into more deeply. One of the types of topics at a 3.5-day executive training here at Yale, working with faculty in a number of different centers to show the original research that's there, but really provide the tools for sustainability professionals and any executive or leader in an organization who's looking to dig more into this. So April 29th through the 22nd, and you could see the contact information for the program and the senior associate dean that runs it. But looking at some of the mega trends, looking at the tools for executing on these, figuring out how to take a message like this one and move it through the organization to make sure that it has the impact where it should, and then what are the ways of innovating and responding over time to kind of get us out of the same old traps and thinking that we may have been stuck in. So with that, I'll take a pause and thank everybody for their attention and take any questions that are there. My contact information as well as the contact information of the center is here, and happy to follow up and dig into anything that people are interested in.
Well, thank you so much, Stuart. And I think that in our audience today, we have many executives and cross-sector employees as well. And it's very interesting, those survey results. Would would any of you like to weigh in about your experience with millennial employees? Have you found that they've sought a job with you and then quit very quickly, or that they came to you specifically for your product or your service that you offer regarding your environmental management or your social responsibility? Would you all mind if I unmuted you and we could kind of just weigh in? If you don't mind sharing your experiences, I think it would be super interesting.
Hello, Angela. This is Kevin Cochrane with Green Tracks.
Hi, Kevin.
Hi, and I was just going to say, we're Green Tracks is an interesting sustainability and energy management company in that we were incubated out of a larger energy services company that is a petroleum distribution company, and we share offices with Lakeview Energy Services. It's a 40-year-old energy company that's been delivering fuel to service stations and to farmers and a number of different customers. And they own car lock stations, the unattended fueling stations. So they're a petroleum company, and we were incubated out of Lakeview as a energy tracking company, and in that Lakeview tracked fuel usage, for their customers as just a matter of business. And Green Tracks was created by our founder Ryan Rogers as a way to track all energy consumption, electricity, natural gas, fuels, water, other resources, just as a natural extension of tracking energy and resources for a company. We're completely separate corporation, but we're in the same building. And what I wanted to say was, in our recruitment for employees, it's really night and day, at the college campuses when we talk about Green Tracks and our mission as far as reducing greenhouse gases and bringing sustainability to businesses and providing kind of actionable steps that they can take through energy efficiency and other means. Students are really, they're forward-looking, and we see a lot of activity in terms of recruitment. And on the other side, for the petroleum company, it's really just the opposite. They're the ones with the black eye, and sometimes rightfully so, but they have a much more difficult time recruiting talent from the millennial generation. And then when we have hired students out of college with these aspirations, there are some definite traits that we found associated with the millennial generation in terms of their attention to, their multitasking, attention to detail, and sort of we have found that they haven't. There's been a kind of a cycle of interest, but they're you're young out of college, trying to get a few years experience in sustainability before they move on to their next thing. So it's been a little bit harder to retain those employees. But I just want to share kind of our experience with with that generation, and also with having a sustainability company as opposed to having a petroleum company, really a night and day situation.
Right. We have another caller on the phone named Godwin from Nigeria, who is also in the oil and gas industry as well. And we were having an interesting conversation not too long ago about the ways that oil and gas companies are managing for sustainability and transitioning to a new economy for energy solutions. And it's such an interesting way that you said that, Kevin. And I'd like you to see, Stuart, I was so interested to connect your two thoughts that when you went over the data on the responses, I thought perhaps a lot of these students may have been part of the cohort from the GNAM survey, and that perhaps the response rates may even be higher because they're interested in sustainability and they're part of that cohort. Do you think that the data that we're listening to today could be a little bit higher due to the audience?
I think that these schools, the vast majority of them don't have a kind of a focus on sustainability in their business education. Some of it have it incorporated, like HEC in Paris is one that has a robust curriculum. I think there's one that at Yale is the same way. So maybe there's an attractive component of that for students coming in. But when you're representing the whether it's the Asian Institute of Management or in business school in Indonesia or in the Chile or in China, I think the representation, we hope, and that's the way the network was formed, for it to be broadly representative of global interests. I think that so we sent out the survey to make it blind to people. That it was about sustainability and climate change. You had to actually do all your demographic information before you even found out. So you were going through kind of 20 questions before you even knew that you were answering something about climate change and environmental sustainability. Then after the fact, with a 2-week period where it was open, students could then say, oh, this is about X, and then they would make sure that other people within their school noticed and saw it and would take the survey. So you could have seen a bit of a bias there. As I mentioned, though, from the first moment we started looking at the results to the end, the results stayed remarkably consistent, though. So I think that my sense and gut would be, and this is going to other surveys and information that's there, and information on millennials, whether you look at the Deloitte survey that recently came out, or other things that have been done, is that this is just part of a cresting wave, that this is actually just a generational shift that's underway, and that people are valuing different things. Just as in the U.S., a car doesn't mean freedom to a millennial, but a cell phone does. A job with meaning and purpose may mean more than excess compensation now, where that didn't have the same relationship 20 or 30 years ago. So I think this may just, our sense is from looking at the results that this is broadly representative of where other things come in.
And yes, thank you for clarifying that, because I really was impressed with the global response that you received from sending out your survey. And here in California, we know that we are far ahead of engagement in sustainability education, and growing millennials that absolutely want an education in sustainability to be prepared to work for employers in the food industry or whatever it might be. And here's what I'm hearing from my graduates, though, is that yes, they feel upon graduation, 84% of them that I see are super engaged. And they want to work for a responsible company. But then all of the other aspects fall into place once they get into that job. Within 3 to 6 months, they're saying, well, why is my paycheck only this much and my other friends are making this much? And that they start to reconsider what their priorities are, and pay, salary, compensation becomes a major factor. Not only just the really value of working for an organization that's doing so much really well. And I think that, I see it a lot with even my own interns, that their lackluster over time turns into the regular employee problems too. So that's why I had asked the audience if you could share with me, are you having the same situations occur? And when Kevin had mentioned that oftentimes that he'll have a difficulty attracting millennials, not only to the green space, but to the office environment, I think that, that has something to do with this survey as well, that's saying that, maybe I want to do a career where I'm working outside. And I've talked to many of my own students that definitely want to be outside. So even just working in the office environment is super challenging for some of them. And so, any other thoughts that you'd like to share with us from the audience about your experience working with millennials? And do you oftentimes find that these results, I mean, I find these results write down what I think is happening out there, and how can we help you to suggest ways to retain these employees as well, I think would be an important part of our discussion. And also, if I could weigh in with you, Stuart, there's a section where you were talking about the 5 suggestions that 70 to 94% of respondents said were important to them about the suggestions that they would like to see business doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I can definitely relate to definitely the people on our call today that industry collaboration where we're talking C-suite to C-suite and board level discussions are definitely an expectation of millennials. And I believe that here in the United States, we do give many companies have a strong collaboration between the C-suites and CEO to CEO and board level to board level. And so I think that's something that's definitely in high gear as far as the corporate 1000 goes. And even I see it in our small business community, in our medium space business community, that the CEOs are really engaged in trying to see what's going to be the best strategy for their company. And right down our alley, as far as certification goes in our education, what we're focusing on is measuring and assessing and measuring your impacts. And then being able to distribute those metrics through your internal organization, through your board level, and then also communicating those to your stakeholders, especially stockholders. And so I'm really happy to see that that was part of the recommendations and suggestions, because it helped me know that we're right on track with what we're hoping to educate people to be prepared to work for organizations that are engaged in sustainability.
Yeah, no, I think that I think that's right. I mean, that's well right in line with what we we're seeing, and I think that there is an opportunity for people to step out in leadership roles, much in the way that Paul Pullman has done with Unilever, and kind of create a global brand around a company that they are a global problem solver rather than just a provider of consumer goods, and I
Great
think that's
example.
a pretty interesting one to be able to wrap your business strategy in, and provides you with a lot of advantages. And Sam, I wanted to make sure I got to a question from Sam here, who asked, and changing topic a little bit, would the business school instructors be surprised by the survey results? Are they hearing the call for the increased focus on sustainability from their students? So we presented the results to this global network of deans in India in November. So they saw it right before it went out to Paris, and their response. You can actually see one of the deans writing in a publication called Global Network Perspectives from the South African dean. Walter Betts, and he was just saying that it's incumbent on the schools to act and change. And so I think the deans themselves were interested in doing this survey because they'd already been hearing about this at in conversations amongst students, and then to get the results back, we're actually reporting back to each school individually with anonymized results on the rest of the schools, but with specific results on their student population, so they can get a sense of how to best adjust and tailor programs. And I think in general there is momentum and change happening in business schools, but from the results of the survey, it clearly isn't happening quick enough. So I think folks are hearing the call, but they may not be looking at just how swiftly people want to see the change happen. Yeah, and Kevin writing in, are there plans? It's a great question. If we can do the survey in the future. So I think we're going to do another survey on this in not this year, but in the following year, and looking to follow up with the survey respondents who graduated to see, some of those questions that Angela mentioned on when people put two offers in front of you, which one do you actually choose? The one with, a better social and environmental mission, or one with more salary, and can we tease out some of those results, or what is your satisfaction working at a mission-driven organization to get at some of those issues, but then also just to see if there's a change in a response over time. And also I think that absolutely open to having other MBA programs participate. Obviously, the kind of core group here is this Global Network for Advanced Management, because it's it creates such an easy way of making sure that we get these results in a way we can report them out, and the partnership between the schools is so strong. But where we have other relationships with schools like Duke and MIT and others, we'd be looking to see if we could add those in where appropriate.
I think that's phenomenal, and I would really like to help with the survey in any way if I could. And our school as well would want to participate. And I know that my co-author in University of Johannesburg, South Africa, would like to participate as well. Just looking at the results of your survey, this is really taking hold. And I'm so glad that you conducted the survey, and especially on a global level, to see that. And I thank everyone in our audience for participating today, and I'll be sending out anybody who left their email on the login. I can send out a copy of the video to you if you'd like to see the archive a little bit later on. But any further questions before we end the call?
Angela or Stuart, can you also provide the presentation?
Yeah, happy to. Yeah, I'll PDF it and send it to Angela, and then she can distribute it to everyone.
Oh, great. That's great information. Thank you very much.
Oh, my pleasure. Really appreciate your time and attention, and hope the results are useful for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Very good work, Stuart. Thank you so much for being our presenter today. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Everyone have a great day.
You too. Have a great day, everyone. Thanks for joining the call.
Thank you.